One day, while Leo was adjusting the sheets, arranging the pillows, and ensuring everything was in order in Rachel's room, with a familiar smile on his face, he whispered softly in her ear, "Don't lose faith. You can do this." He heard the sound of high heels echoing down the corridor. Shortly after, a hand opened the door to the room abruptly. Immediately, the air filled with the subtle fragrance of an expensive perfume, and a woman dressed in elegant clothes from a famous designer appeared with a cold look directed straight at him. It was Clara, Rachel's mother. She appeared with high heels and a posture full of pride, exuding elegance. Suddenly, Clara reprimanded the young janitor. "What are you doing near my daughter? Are you a nurse? The last thing Rachel needs is a janitor wandering around here. Finish your cleaning and leave now." Leo lowered his head without saying a word, stepping away from Rachel's bed and returning to his cleaning duties, leaving the room for a few minutes. Enough time to hear Clara coldly say to Rachel, her daughter in a coma, whom Leo loved in secret, "I'm a wealthy and talented woman. I can't imagine spending the rest of my life here waiting for you to wake up. You know the opportunity to marry into such a powerful family isn't easy, so I don't want to wait much longer. Wake up soon and fulfill your mission, Rachel." Leo left the room with sadness in his heart, pushing his cleaning cart, deeply pensive. Sometimes the people who should be nurturing flowers in our garden are the ones who uproot them. Hearing those words from the woman who was Rachel's mother, the girl he loved, broke Leo's heart into 1,000 pieces. He got lost in his thoughts. "I just want her to be happy, that's all." However, the young janitor waited in the corridor to see the arrogant mother of Rachel leave the room, so he could sneak in and repair the cruel words that might cause deep pain to the girl in a coma whom he loved so much. He whispered in her ear words full of love and hope, certain she could hear him. "True love never gives up," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "And I won't give up on you either, Rachel. You will wake up, I know you will. If you can imagine it, you can achieve it, and I'll imagine it for you to help you achieve it. Now I need to go, but tomorrow morning I'll return with more flowers for you, and I'll bring a gift I'm sure you'll like." The next day, the humble young man working as a janitor entered the room with beautiful roses, which he placed in the familiar vase. Shortly after, he took his old cell phone out of his uniform pocket and played a song, saying, "Last night, I wrote the lyrics to a song for you. This is my gift." He immediately tuned his voice and sang an inspiring song. After finishing the melodious performance, he lightly kissed her cheek and whispered in her ear, "You are stronger than you imagine," caressing her hair with tenderness. "You can overcome anything you want." A few hours later, on the same day, an emergency alarm sounded in the hospital. The shrill, sharp sound caught everyone's attention in the corridor, and quickly, a crowd of doctors and nurses rushed to Rachel's room. The young woman who had been in a coma for months finally showed signs of recovery. The nurse in charge, her heart pounding with emotion, monitored Rachel's vital signs as she slowly opened her eyes. A murmur of astonishment spread among the healthcare professionals around the bed, in complete admiration. It was a miracle. Leo, while pushing the cleaning cart down the corridor, heard the whispers starting to spread. "The rich girl woke up," the nurses murmured. His heart, though full of joy, also tightened with pain. "The important thing is that you're happy, Rachel," he whispered to himself, aware that now that she had woken up, his presence would no longer be welcome. Her mother would no longer leave her side, and he could never whisper in her ear again. Sadness flooded his heart, but was also mixed with happiness for Rachel's miraculous recovery. The conflict of emotions tore him apart inside. Shortly after, Clara, Rachel's mother, arrived at the hospital, her fashion making her stand out in the crowd, her expensive perfume filling the air. Her cold, calculating gaze immediately focused on the door to her daughter's room. With determined steps, she entered the room where Rachel was still trying to focus her eyes on the approaching figure. "Rachel!" Clara exclaimed, her voice full of a mix of relief and reprimand. "I can't believe you woke up. You have no idea how worried I was. Finally, we can proceed with the wedding and enjoy the honors of that extremely wealthy and renowned family." Rachel, still confused, looked at her mother with a slight smile, but something in her expression revealed perplexity. Clara, used to being the center of attention, quickly moved to her daughter, leaning to kiss Rachel's forehead in a hurried gesture. She accidentally knocked over the glass of water on the bedside table, spilling it on the floor. "Oh no, I almost ruined this elegant dress," Clara frowned, saying, "That's the last thing I need right now." Without wasting time, she opened the room door and spotted Leo in the distance, cleaning the corridor. She called out rudely, "Hey, janitor." Her voice echoed down the corridor. "Come here now and do your job." Leo was startled, stopped what he was doing, and lowered his head as he headed to Rachel's room, feeling the weight of the situation. He entered the room and, without daring to lift his head, began cleaning the mess Clara had caused. His heart pounded. Though the joy for Rachel's recovery was great, the pain of knowing his time with her had ended hurt deeply. Clara, impatient and irritated, turned to Leo. "Is it clean yet?" she asked, crossing her arms with an expression of discontent. "I don't understand why you're still here. You're intruding on our privacy. Leave now." Leo, with an almost inaudible voice, murmured, "I'm sorry, ma'am," as he was about to leave, pushing his cleaning cart. Rachel, who had observed the situation in silence, slowly sat up in bed, surprised to hear Leo's voice. Something inside her awakened a familiar sensation, a vague memory of voices in the dark. With evident effort, she spoke. "Wait, stop, repeat what you just said." Clara, not understanding anything, turned to her, frowning. "What are you talking about, Rachel?" she said, her voice full of confusion and concern. "Are you crazy? Being in a coma for so long has affected you." But Rachel ignored her, all her attention turning to Leo. "Tell me," she insisted with an urgency that surprised everyone in the room. "Tell me your name." "Rachel," Leo said, feeling even more embarrassed, lowering his head, feeling the gazes of both women on him. With a trembling voice, he replied, "My name is Leo." "I'm sorry for bothering you, ma'am." Clara heard this, frowned with disdain, and said with a sarcastic voice, "Leo? What a simple name, fitting for someone who only knows cleaning work. I don't know what you think you're doing here, but enough. You're here to clean, not to bother my daughter." However, Rachel couldn't contain the emotion growing inside her. A slow but radiant smile appeared on her face as she whispered, "It's you. It's always been you. You're real. The man of my dreams is real." "I wasn't dreaming." Clara was completely confused, took a step back, looking at Rachel as if she had lost her mind. "What are you saying, Rachel?" she said, her voice full of incredulity. "What's going on? This is absurd." But Rachel, with her gaze fixed on Leo, continued with a voice full of emotion. "It wasn't a dream. During all that time in the dark, I heard a voice that brought hope, that gave me strength to keep fighting. And now I know it wasn't a dream. It was your voice, Leo." Leo couldn't contain the tears streaming from his eyes. He took a step back, overwhelmed by the intensity of the situation. Clara, irritated and feeling humiliated, interrupted. "This is ridiculous, Rachel. You don't know what you're saying. You're delirious." But Rachel didn't listen to her anymore. She reached out to Leo, her gaze full of gratitude and tenderness. "Leo," her voice was a message full of emotion. "You were the one who kept me alive. You were the one who brought me back to life." Leo, with his heart pounding in his chest, didn't know what to say, his mind struggling with Rachel's words. However, the love he felt for her, his silent dedication, found resonance in her soul, and now for the first time he felt that everything he had done hadn't been in vain. Clara, unable to bear it any longer, thinking her daughter was experiencing some kind of hallucination, turned to the door angrily. "This is madness. I'll come back tomorrow to take you home, and I hope by then you've changed your mind. Remember, we need to make up for all the lost time to fulfill your marriage to the son of the most powerful family in this country," she exclaimed before leaving the room, her posture firm but inside full of chaos and anger. Rachel, holding Leo's hand, looked into his eyes, and at that moment, everything that had happened between them, everything he had done in silence, seemed to come to life in his eyes. "Leo," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion, "thank you. Thank you for everything." Leo, with tears streaming down his face, could barely speak, his voice a trembling whisper, "You don't need to thank me. Just be happy, that's enough." The room was filled with a silence full of emotion, a silence that said everything about the accumulated feelings over the past months, all the unrequited love, all the hope that finally blossomed. Rachel, with a smile radiating deep peace, moved gently and embraced Leo, and in that moment, both understood that what they shared went beyond words, beyond any rational explanation. It was a bond forged in silence and darkness, and now in the light, it emerged as a true miracle. The next day, Claire arrived early to help her daughter prepare to leave the hospital and return to the mansion. Rachel, still walking slowly, with her mind confused by the emotions of the previous day, was saying goodbye to the doctor at the hospital entrance. Clara, ahead with an expression of relief, stood beside her daughter, holding her arm firmly while the doctor gave the final instructions for her recovery. Rachel, barely able to concentrate on the doctor's words, her eyes anxiously scanning the surroundings, searching for the young janitor Leo, feeling every second passing without seeing him, an inexplicable sadness she couldn't fully understand. Her mind struggled between gratitude and a much deeper feeling that began to emerge from a hidden corner of her heart. From a hidden corner of the hospital, Leo observed the scene, tears in his eyes. Watching Rachel prepare to leave and then realizing she was heading for a marriage caused him such intense pain, he was forced to turn away and hide so no one would see him. He knew he had no place in the world to which she belonged, but the love he felt for her consumed him from within. "Do you understand?" the doctor said, bringing Rachel back to reality. "Yes, I understand," Rachel murmured, smiling energetically and nodding. Yet her mind was elsewhere, searching incessantly for the presence that brought hope during the darkest days. Clara, impatient, squeezed her hand tighter, saying with an authoritative voice, "Let's go, Rachel, we have to go." Rachel, with one last look toward the hospital, finally nodded in agreement. As they walked toward the car, her steps felt heavier than usual, as if something was trying to hold her in place. "Let's go, driver," Clara said as she settled into the front seat, adjusting the rearview mirror precisely. Rachel let herself be led, sitting in the back seat without protest, while her mind continued to recall the scent of the roses in the hospital room. On the way back to the mansion, Clara began to talk non-stop, as if nothing had changed. Her voice filled the space with trivialities, superficial details about the wedding preparations, comments on the hall's decoration, the menu choice for the party, and the activities planned to soon become relatives of the powerful family. "Rachel, imagine how wonderful it will be," Clara exclaimed, her voice full of unshakable charm. "The wedding is in a week. Everything is ready. Every detail has been perfectly organized. The hall decorated with the rarest flowers, and the chef prepared a menu that will impress everyone. Our honeymoon will be splendid. We'll visit unique places with reservations at the best hotels. This will be the wedding of the year, and everyone will talk about our family." However, Rachel barely heard her mother's words. They passed through her like a gentle, distant breeze. In her mind, all she could think of was the peace of the hospital room, the delicacy of the fresh flowers Leo brought every day. The contrast between the warmth of those memories and Clara's cold voice plunged Rachel into a sadness she couldn't fully understand. "Rachel, are you listening to me?" Clara asked, turning to look at her with a bit of attention, noticing her distraction. "Yes, of course," she replied automatically, not really realizing what she was agreeing to. Clara frowned but decided not to insist further, as she was too busy with the wedding details to worry about what she considered a simple consequence of a long period Rachel had been in a coma. When they arrived at the mansion, Rachel felt that the luxury she once took so much pride in now suffocated her. Every corner of the house that used to be a refuge for her now seemed devoid of life, devoid of the warmth and love she felt in the hospital, despite being surrounded by opulence. In the following days, Clara was completely immersed in the wedding preparations. Every day, she insistently reviewed every detail, filling the house with decorators, designers, and organizers. Everything had to be perfect for the perfect wedding. According to her, it should be an event worthy of her social status. "Rachel, come see these options for the table centerpieces," Clara constantly called, displaying collections of flowers and lavish decorations. Rachel followed without protest, letting Clara decide everything, but inside, a void grew, a feeling that something essential was missing in her life. The conversations with her mother were empty, meaningless, and her thoughts frequently returned to the young man who had been her only solace during the long months of unconsciousness. One afternoon, while Clara was discussing with the wedding organizer about the table arrangements in the hall, Rachel was alone in the mansion's garden, surrounded by exotic flowers that couldn't erase the memories of the roses scent Leo brought to the hospital. She bent down and picked one of them in her hand, but its aroma seemed too artificial, too manufactured, lacking the authenticity she had loved. She closed her eyes, and for a moment, she could feel Leo's presence by her side, whispering words of encouragement and hope, as he had done so many times in the hospital. Her heart raced as she remembered his voice, soft and warm, so different from the superficial world that now surrounded her. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" Clara's voice startled her from her reverie, looking at her with a touch of impatience on her face. "Nothing. I was just thinking," Rachel replied, letting the flower fall and standing up with a sigh. "You don't have time for thoughts," Clara said, her voice firm. "We have guests waiting to see you as the beautiful young woman you are. We can't make any mistakes." Rachel nodded, feeling more trapped than ever. She knew she was about to enter a life she didn't feel was hers, a life full of superficiality and appearances, but she was too confused and tired to fight it. The days passed quickly, and the mansion was filled with a bustling atmosphere, with Clara always perfect and radiant, overseeing every detail, ensuring everything was in its rightful place. As the wedding day approached, the restlessness in Rachel's heart only grew. The wedding day arrived, and the mansion was stunning. The gardens were adorned with lights and flowers, the banquet hall filled with elegantly arranged tables, and a crowd of guests gathered, all dressed in their finest clothes, waiting for the event of the year. Rachel was radiant in her wedding dress, surrounded by bridesmaids who praised her, but she felt more lost than ever. When she looked at her reflection in the mirror, she could hardly recognize herself. In her mind, only Leo's whispers resonated, his voice full of tenderness and hope. "Rachel, are you okay?" a friend said, entering the room with a smile. Rachel nodded, but inside, a storm of emotions was about to erupt. She knew she was about to take an irreversible step, and the weight of that decision was crushing her. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the young janitor, who knew about the wedding through social media and the news, tried to focus on his work amidst incessant tears. He tried to hide his pain, repeating to himself, "The important thing is that she's happy." Rachel finally arrived at the church. The ceremony began while the groom waited at the altar. Rachel entered the hall in her wedding dress while everyone present admired her. Her mind was filled only with the image of Leo, the young janitor who constantly invaded her thoughts. The crucial moment arrived. The groom was at the altar, holding Rachel's hand while the priest began to read the wedding vows. The church was silent, all eyes fixed on the couple. The priest's voice echoed solemnly in the air. "Rachel, do you take Matthew as your lawful husband, to love and respect him in health and sickness, in wealth and poverty, until death do you part?" For a moment, time seemed to stop. Rachel felt the weight of the question, and at the same time, a flood of memories began to inundate her mind. Leo's soft whispers resonated in her memory, the words of encouragement he had spoken to her while she was in a coma. She could see the fresh roses filling the room with their fragrance, and suddenly, the melody of the song Leo sang to her on the day she woke up flooded her consciousness. Finally, she remembered that it was that song that ignited the spark that awakened her soul from the darkness, and at that moment, everything became clear. The gaps in her mind disappeared. Rachel remembered clearly the cruel words and actions of Clara, her mother, who never cared about her daughter's feelings. Everything she did was for her own greed and pursuit of status. She recalled how her mother didn't care when her daughter was in a coma, anxiously wanting her to wake up just to fulfill her duty with a marriage that would cause her deep pain, even when she couldn't move or respond. In contrast to this, she remembered Leo's tenderness, his silent dedication, and his unconditional love. Rachel, she began to say, her voice trembling, speaking directly into Matthew's eyes, the groom, "I'm sorry, but I can't marry someone I have no feelings for. Have you ever questioned the reason behind this marriage?" Rachel said, and then turned to her mother. "Now I can remember everything." Clara looked at her, confused. "What are you talking about, Rachel?" she said, her voice full of impatience. Rachel took a deep breath and continued, her voice becoming firmer with each word. "I remember what you said when I was in a coma. I remember you saying I shouldn't be lying there useless." She paused, feeling the anger and sadness grow in her heart. "I remember you being more concerned with the wedding's postponement and your reputation than with my life." A murmur of astonishment echoed through the church. Clara turned pale, her face revealing disbelief and anger. "That's not true." She tried to control the situation. "You don't know what you're saying. You're confused from being in a coma for so long." Rachel shook her head, a determined calm taking over her. "No, Mom, I'm not confused. I remember everything clearly, and I also remember how that janitor, the young man I had never met before, took care of me with more love and dedication than you ever did. He was the one who gave me the strength to wake up, who brought life back to me." He repeated incessantly, "If you can imagine it, you can achieve it." Clara looked at her, surprised. "What are you talking about? That insignificant janitor? This is ridiculous. I think you're delirious because of the coma. Why are you saying these things in the middle of the wedding? This is surely a joke." But Rachel no longer listened to her mother. Her heart had already decided. "Mom, Clara, I can't go through with this. My heart belongs to someone else, someone who showed me what true love is." She paused, her eyes steady on the groom, Matthew. "I'm sorry, but I can't marry you. You deserve to marry someone who truly loves you." The declaration fell like a bomb in the church. Clara was shocked, exploding in anger. "This is madness, Rachel. You're ruining the most important wedding of the year, and you—" But Rachel didn't hear her mother anymore. A courage she hadn't felt in a long time made her let go of Matthew's hand and take a step back, moving away from the altar. I'm sorry, Matthew. Find a love without second intentions, she said one last time before turning and leaving the church, leaving behind a furious mother and a crowd of perplexed guests. She got into the car and drove straight to the hospital, her heart pounding as she drove through the city streets, flashing by. When she arrived there, she parked hastily and ran towards the entrance, desperate to find Leo. "Where's Leo, the janitor?" she asked one of the nurses at the reception. "I need to find him." The nurse looked at her, confused. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't know exactly where he is. He works in the cleaning area, but at the moment, I don't know where in the hospital he is." Desperation began to take over Rachel. She couldn't let Leo slip away, not after everything that had happened. She looked around and saw the internal communication system used to make announcements throughout the hospital. Without thinking twice, she turned to the nurse. "Please, I need to use the communication system," she said urgently. The nurse looked at her, surprised. "It's not allowed for patients or visitors to use the communication system, ma'am. Only staff can." Rachel, without wasting time, looked directly into the nurse's eyes, pleading for a favor. "It's an emergency. I need to find him. Please help me. If you've ever believed in love, help me now." The nurse hesitated for a moment, but something in Rachel's voice and eyes convinced her. She nodded slowly and took the microphone of the communication system. Her voice echoed throughout the hospital. "We request the janitor named Leo to come immediately to the hospital entrance." Rachel ran to the entrance to wait, her heart beating fast. A few minutes passed, but it felt like an eternity until the door opened, and Leo appeared in his janitor uniform, his face clearly showing surprise and confusion. "What's going on?" he asked, looking around and not seeing anyone. At that moment, he felt a light touch on his back. He quickly turned around and was shocked to see a girl with her face hidden by a familiar bouquet of flowers he used to bring to Rachel's room, which she used to cover her face. "Who is it?" Leo said, his heart pounding. "You must be mistaken. You must have confused me with someone else. I'm just a janitor." The girl said nothing, slowly lowering the bouquet, revealing her face. It was Rachel, her eyes full of tenderness, looking intently at him. "No, Leo," she said with a soft voice, full of emotion. "You're more than that. You're the man who stole my heart." Leo blushed, completely confused, almost unable to speak. "You shouldn't be at your wedding. Why are you here?" "I just wanted you to be happy." Rachel took a step towards him with a warm smile on her face. "You are my happiness, Leo," she whispered before leaning in and giving him a gentle, delicate kiss, full of the promise of a future they were just beginning to explore. "I promise never to forget that this is the love of my life," she added as she hugged him tightly. Subscribe to the channel and click on the notification. Help this channel reach 1,000 subscribers. This way YouTube will deliver this content to more people who will benefit. I count on your help. Then she took a small box out of her pocket. When she opened it, the box revealed 2 identical necklaces. Tears filled his eyes as Rachel gently stood on tiptoe and placed one of the necklaces around his neck, then put the other around her own neck, marking a promise reborn from an unexpected place and at the darkest moment, but now shining with the purest light. With a bouquet in one hand and love in the other, Rachel and Leo walked together out of the hospital, ready to start a new life, a life full of love, hope, and above all, the promise that true miracles would always appear in their paths. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to continue bringing touching stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.